Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Immigration Talk with myself, immigration lawyer John Khosravi, and my wonderful associate, Anya Sergeeva. Thank you so much for coming on again, Anya.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. How are you doing today?
Doing good. I mean, we're going to start talking about some sad news about COVID with the new travel ban. So there's a little bit of downside. But on the other end, we're also going to discuss, documentation needed for marriage cases and removal conditions. In particular, a special exception that requires additional work for those who got a green card through marriage and soon afterwards, within 5 years, are remarrying someone else to get them their green card. So we're going to jump into that. But let's go with the not so good news. This Omicron COVID variant is popping up, and they discovered it essentially in Africa. Not clear if it started there or not, but it's already all over the place. But the U.S. government instituted a travel ban pretty quickly. Have you had a chance to review what this travel ban is about and who it covers?
Yes, I reviewed the proclamation. Proclamation was issued on November 26, 2021 by President Biden. And it basically says that anyone, both immigrants and non-immigrants, so it covers both immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas. This is very important. Okay, I will go back to it a bit later. So anyone who was in this countries, I will name them. It's Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe during the 14-day period right before they're trying to enter the United States, um, is prohibited from entry. So
Mhm.
these people who need to travel to the United States, they would need to go to some other third country and stay there for at least 14, probably it's better 15 days, depends on how you count, right?
Yeah.
And stay there before traveling to the United States. So it resembles a bit the proclamation that was enforced regarding the Schengen area, right? That was just repelled on when November 8th, right? So, but there are a few things that I want to mention, particularly about this. What is interesting about this proclamation? Again, it doesn't apply to citizens. It doesn't apply to lawful permanent residents. It doesn't apply to spouses of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents. There are a bunch of other exceptions, right? So I'm not gonna go all over through all of them because it's like the whole list. So
Yeah.
the thing, interesting thing about it is Section 3. It says that the Secretary of State shall implement this proclamation as it applies to visas. So, what does it mean? If you remember, when the Schengen ban was still here, U.S. embassies in Europe, in the Schengen area, they refused to issue certain kinds of visas based on the proclamation.
Yeah.
And then there was this long litigation. It's called Kinsley versus Blinken case that came out recently. I believe it was September. All right. But at this point, it became almost moot. And the judge in this decision said that, okay, Department of State cannot not issue visas to people, even if there is a proclamation there, right? You can stop the entry, but you cannot stop issuing the visas based on the proclamation. And again, this proclamation specifically says that they don't know if they're going to continue issuing visas in this country or not. So they give it to the to the to the Secretary of State to decide on that. So we don't know. Again, we don't know yet how it's going to work. Whether it's going to go because Blinken, I'm sorry, it's Kinsley versus Blinken is a precedent that has to be followed,
Yeah.
right? And if they say that, okay, we're not going to issue these visas, but there is this precedent, so we will see. We'll see how it's going to work. But it's important thing to know.
It's
Another thing,
another thing they do to get around this is they just don't schedule interviews then, because if they have to issue the visa and then because of the decision, but a lot of times people won't be able to even schedule an interview, it won't be available. That's their way of getting around issuing visas kind of circumstances. So it's
right?
not clear cut about how this is going to practically work out for a lot of people. A lot of people with work visas and marriage visas and the like. Go ahead. Yeah, you had more you
Yeah,
wanted to.
as I mentioned at the beginning, it applies to both immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas.
Mhm.
So there is no end date for the proclamation. So it's gonna stay with us until it's terminated by the president. And again, we don't know how much time it's gonna take. And because this proclamation was issued, and because Omicron variant is everywhere now, um, I hope not, but there is still chance that some other countries will fall under new travel restrictions.
Now, you mentioned the immigrant visa. Let's define that. So, people who have green cards or green card holders, they have immigrant visas, but if they've already entered the United States with the visa they get from the embassy, the immigrant visa, they're green card holders, they can come and go. But the immigrant visa are those who may have had an interview at the embassy but have not flown into the US yet. So, they have the visa, but it has been stamped by the Customs and Border Protection of the airport. Those people are subject to the travel ban. They have the visa already. They could now go and we're in one of these countries. They go and wait outside for 2 weeks, and then come in. But it becomes difficult, just going to another country and stay 2 weeks. Not easy thing. It's very expensive, finding a hotel, flights, and all that kind of stuff. And you have to be mindful that the visa in these kind of cases is only valid to the length of the medical checkup. So if it expires, you'll have to do a new medical checkup, get a new visa. So it's a big headache for all these people coming from these countries, as it was for so many people from Europe and Brazil and China and Iran and India and all these people that were subject to this. So we'll see what happens. But thanks for getting into that. It's affecting a lot of people.
Yes, and one last thing that I want to mention, following what you just said, uh, we had a case where parent of a U.S. citizen got their visas, right, but they didn't
Yeah.
travel to the United States right away. It was still when Schengen ban was still in force, and they decided to travel like 2 weeks before the expiration of their medical checkup. And
Hmm.
before that, they entered, I don't remember, I think it was Poland. And just because of that, they were in Schengen, but they were traveling from other country that was not even under the proclamation. They were denied entry, and they had to go through the whole embassy process from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
don't leave it at the last moment.
Yeah, it's planning out. That's the thing. When you get the visa, come as soon as possible. And then once you have a green card and you can get citizenship, file for that as soon as possible. Don't delay on these kind of things, because you really don't know what's going to happen. You think, okay, well, you think we're done with the travel bans, and a lot of people may have gone to consular processing to South Africa to finish up a case, and all of a sudden they're stuck now. They won't be able to come in, and then everything gets messed up that way. But thank you for that. If people had more questions and want to discuss, in a more private setting, they can always email us at info@jqklaw.com to schedule a consultation. In particular, when it comes to document kind of stuff and planning things out, one situation that we see, and it's a very nuanced point that many don't know about, is regarding marriage cases, which is one of our focuses, or our primary focus. This is in the I-130 situation when a person gets their green card through marriage, and the marriage ends up not working out. So the foreign person who got the green card from marriage to either citizen or green card holder decides, they meet someone else, they want to get remarried, then apply for a green card for that foreign person, maybe like their home country or something like that. Interestingly, there's a higher standard to get that approved, and let me go into more detail and kind of restate what the situation is. So you say you're a foreign person, you get married to a green card holder or a U.S. citizen, and you get your green card, but then you divorce and you want to marry someone new and get them their green card. Well, the regulations, the way they're set up is, if within 5 years of you getting your green card based on marriage, you decide to apply for a marriage green card for someone else, they look at that with mistrust. And so what happens is, typically when you're doing a case, in most immigration kind of cases, they have a standard called the preponderance of the evidence standard, or more likely than not, kind of like 51%. Is this real? 51% chance that it's real, then they'll approve it. But if you're in a situation where you got your green card based on marriage, now you're going to use your green card to give someone else a green card, they raise that standard to the clear and convincing evidence standard, which is really high standard. And this pops up if you're getting remarried within 5 years of getting your green card. So it typically, in the past, when this has popped up, I've had clients come to me, and it's been 4 years after they got their green card, they got engaged. They'll say, listen, just wait for a full 5 years before you get married to avoid this. Because what happens is, if you do get married within the 5 years and try to get a green card for the foreign person, the new spouse, you're going to be required not only to prove the bona fide relationship of the new relationship, but they're going to go heavily into the previous marriage to make sure that was real. And that could potentially lead to marriage fraud or denials or getting your green card taken away, all this kind of stuff. So it's something to be very cautious about. And it just, the important part of it is always have really good bona fides of whatever you do. Don't do the minimum. And we kind of at our firm, we overdo it because we never know what's going to happen 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the future. When it comes to someone remarrying, well, in this scenario, well, you want to have joint documents, or in the scenario for removal of conditions, Form I-751. So the importance of having really good bona fide documents in both sessions is really important. We're going to talk about bona fide documents in a second, but the Code of Federal Regulations section is 204.2, petitions for relatives, subsection AI1 that goes into this for those who are really interested. 8 CFR 204.2 letter A1 and Roman numeral I gets into this kind of stuff about the clear and convincing evidence standard. We're going to talk about what documents you require, but Anya, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to add one small thing. So even after you get your green card based on marriage, even after that, it's always good to still collect evidence like bona fides, even after you're done, because as the practice shows, you might not be done yet. Under
Yeah,
this circumstance, if something happens and you divorce your first spouse and you remarry someone else and wants to bring them over to the United States, so
yeah.
yeah, so just collect as you used to. We always tell our clients, once we even submit the paperwork, we always tell them, please don't stop, right? Just collect all
Yeah.
the paperwork for the interview, and even after that, because again, you never know if you need it. Good thing if you don't need it, right? But if you need it and you don't have it, this might cause an issue.
Yeah, these bona fides are important, not for the original cases you mentioned, is removal of conditions. If a person is remarried, and they're looking back to previous marriage, or even up till citizenship, whenever that comes up, not only to get the 3 year citizenship instead of 5 years if you're married to a U.S. citizen, but who knows, an officer could happen on citizenship, will look at back documents and have some doubt and say, well, go and show us proof you're originally married. Maybe like you got your green card, 10 years later, you get divorced, and then 5 years later, after that, you apply for citizenship. The officer might come back and say, well, I don't trust that original relationship. This kind of stuff, it's rare, but it does pop up. So, 15 years is gone, you might not have documents. Very important to keep documentation. It's mostly digital nowadays. Keep a folder, accumulate this so you have proof of everything in case you get some person that's going to hassle you, that you have answers and prepare for that. So, when it comes to these documents for bona fides, for I-130, I-751, maybe citizenship, maybe remarriage, what kind of stuff are you thinking about, Anya? Like, if you should have prepared?
uh, what I'm thinking about, the main thing is that um, all this paperwork that USCIS wants you to submit to show that your relationship is real, it's in my personal opinion, it's outstanding. It's outdated. I'm sorry, it's outdated standard. You know,
Yeah.
nowadays people might not even live together, and they will still have will be in valid marriage, and they're real.
Mhm.
They might not live together. They might not have joint account together, right? For any reasons, right? They might not file taxes under married filing jointly, right? They might still
Mhm.
file married like separately, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a scenario where people have student loans, so they don't want to merge their taxes because it's going to cost higher student loans, or they might be living together on a lease, but if they add the spouse's name, their lease or their rent is going to go up, and they don't want that to happen. So there's a lot of reasons. So this, as you said, it's outdated, and it really goes towards, it helps people who are wealthier and have property together. Some people don't have health insurance to show joint health insurance is really important. Some people keep their bank accounts separate because one spouse is not good at keeping money. They spend a lot. I've had clients where they had joint bank accounts and they separated it because one spouse was overspending and they didn't trust them with the money. Not because of the relationship, it's because the partner was not responsible or reliable. So we want all these documents as much as possible, joint bank accounts that are used, rent, lease agreements, all this kind of stuff. But we do appreciate that it is outdated. And there was a case one of our colleagues talked about in court where a judge talked about this, how it is outdated.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
uh, yes, and but it's still here, right? And we have to
Mhm.
play by the rules. So you might think of something that even doesn't come to your head first. Like for example, a very good thing that we recently started to use is, if you have Amazon account, even if it's not joint accounts, right? But you didn't add your spouse there, but your spouse, for example, still orders using your account, right?
Yeah.
And you can go to Amazon.com or just Google like Amazon spreadsheet history, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And Amazon will tell you how to do it. You can retrieve the whole thing. It's like a big Excel file showing what did you order, your name, your spouse name. Again, if you were both using the same account, right?
Yeah.
Your addresses, everything where it goes, and it's beautiful thing. It's something that you can use, right? For example, if you don't have a lot of other bona fides.
Yeah. There's even things that, like Netflix accounts where you have, your own names and directories. So there's a typical stuff of joint property when it comes to rental or home ownership. Bank accounts, credit cards, joint finances in that route, health insurance, car insurance, life insurance, putting each other as beneficiaries of different death accounts, and or having some. There's these. I forgot what the term it is, but these things you can write up or have signed that says if I'm in a coma, for example, my spouse can make decisions about my life, all this kind of stuff. But then this next level of these Amazon accounts, Netflix accounts, cards you've written each other, emails, potentially love letters, kind of stuff you email. All this could be printed out, and obviously photos with family and friends and together over the years, maybe even caption photos. But all these can be used for bona fides to prove relationship. The more you have, the better. I always try to overdo it because we can't send someone out there without as much evidence as possible. It's better to have more than less. Even though sometimes lawyers say it's not good to send so much because it creates the expectation for the USCIS adjudicator that they're always going to get this much, and some couples don't have as much. And I appreciate that. That may be a worry. That's true. But at the same time, each person, each client we have, we're just dedicated to that one client. We can't sacrifice them for a long-term trend or something like that. So the more, the better is just so important. These kind of things.
Right. Both. I just want to mention that both under submission and over submission, both are like fraud indicators for USCIS. Both.
Yeah.
If you submit too little or if you submit too much, it's both look suspicious to them,
Yeah,
even though
that's
that
a
might
big
not
problem.
necessarily be the case.
Yeah, there was something, I can't remember what it was, but in the adjudicator's field manual, which was the old training system for USCIS officers, there was one thing where they say in the instructions that you have to do, but in their training they said if someone does this, it's an indicator of fraud, and I can't remember what it was exactly, but there's this. It just really makes it really complicated and subjective and unreliable when they have this kind of stuff too much or too little. There's standards that we always put, and so there's a limit. Sometimes if it's too much, we'll keep some back and say, listen, if we get an RFE, or when you go to the in-person interview, bring this in as additional documents. So for example, declarations and letters from family and friends that are aware of your relationship. If the couple doesn't have that much documentation, we'll definitely submit those. But if we have a lot, I just say, listen, let's hold this back in case they want more evidence, or just bring this to the interview with you because it is too much. And so we don't need to send this much for declarations, but we do pull back and throttle it somewhat if it's just way too much.
Right. And in regards to pictures, um, I see some people on Facebook who submit the paperwork by themselves. They say, or someone told me I need to submit like 300 pictures, right?
Yeah.
From like every month at least from through the whole relationship. This is not necessarily the case,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
20, probably 20, 30 pictures maximum would be enough, especially during like very important events like your wedding or like family celebrations or travel
Yeah.
together. But again, it depends. It can be more, but not less than that. At
Yeah,
least.
and don't send photo albums. I've had people do it on their own in case they're returned, like because they have photo albums, stuff like that. And what we do is we just print it on our printer. Like people digitally send us the photos, we print it. Sometimes I do 4 to a page, depending on how many photos they have, and just so that when the officers get it, because they have to put it in a big folder, something that's easy for them to flip through. If it's individual photos in a plastic packet, that doesn't fit well within a folder that's in a drawer somewhere. So whatever it is to make it easier, print in color, vivid color, so they can see the humanity of the people involved. But have a mix. And sometimes people send stuff, they're wearing the same outfit. Maybe it's because they take the photo on the same day, or sometimes they wear the same thing. But you got to be conscious if you're sending photos where you're wearing the same thing. It looks like you just took photos in one day just for that. So obviously, most people take a lot of photos now of these phones. I've had clients where they just don't take photos, not into it. Where I'm like, listen, just if you do go on trips, if you're a family event, just take a photo, show your family, just so it's there. But just some people aren't. So if you don't have photos, you have to make up for it. Now, I've seen cases where people get approved with barely any evidence, and I've seen cases where they hassle us when we have tons of evidence. So again, it's not reliable, but you want to have good documentation nonetheless. More having documentation in hand is better than not having it. So really thinking this through is really important for the process.
Yes, and one last thing about the pictures. Make sure you indicate on the pictures or on this sheet that you're gonna print the pictures who is depicted on the picture, right? The date and the place where the picture was taken. So the USCIS officer make it easier for them to
Yeah.
understand who is who and what's going on. Yeah.
It is best practices. Sometimes we don't do it because it requires a lot more work from the clients to go one by one. And one of our things, concierge services, we don't want to hassle clients. So if we have a lot of stuff, like we have a like property ownership, and they've gone on 50 trips together on airplanes. So that's another thing. Joint travel records. We won't ask the client to caption it because it just might, they might be busy or something like that. But especially if you don't have as much, you got to get as much detail as possible with these captions, and specify it is best practices.
Right. And sometimes what we see, USCIS might even say, okay, pictures, they don't prove anything. They don't prove that you're in a real relationship. It just proves that you were with this person at this time, at this date, at this place. So pictures by itself is just part of the submission. It's good to have them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
I'm
but
glad you said that because I have people contact me say, "Well, we have pictures," and they think that's it. And pictures maybe like 15% value. It's really not that much valuable because people can make up, especially with digital stuff right now. There are people who do marriage fraud and they just put these fake pictures up with fake backgrounds and stuff. They get caught about that all the time. So I get it constantly. People say, "We have a bunch of pictures together. We have 100 pictures." I'm like, well, I only need 20, and that's only like 10% of the bona fides. That's like I have it really there psychologically, so when the people are reviewing the file, they see the actual people because there's so much paperwork with just names and alien numbers and addresses. I wanted them to see it's a real person, but that's the value I get from pictures primarily is to show like there's real people behind this. But documentation, bona fides, joint documents, there's a lot more value in other kinds of documents that are more practical than just photos because people could be buddies and friends and they just take a lot of photos together and they enter into scam marriage to kind of help their friend out. So you really need to prove this goes beyond just taking photos, and it is really a partial thing that's needed. We definitely want to have photos, but it's not a primary thing at all.
what is the number thing for you? What is the most important, like, evidence of real relationship? What do you think is that?
I think for them, joint residential documents, lease agreements, and then if you own a property together, own those together. Those are really important. That's primary, and then secondarily, and really just one. If that's 1.0, that's 1.1. Let's say is joint financial documents, bank accounts, credit cards, things you're showing you have money, savings accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts that are together. And then after that, it's kind of like insurances to show this person is the beneficiary of for a certain thing or joint car insurances. But when it comes to finances and where you live, that's part of finances too, I guess. That's primarily. And then secondarily is actual accounts and stuff. Those are really important. Not everyone has those for various reasons. And that's why the idea before we started the show, we were talking about a colleague who went to court, who had their case denied by USCIS at first, went to court, and the judge approved the case. And they said this is so unfair because these bona fides primarily go for people who are, American and Caucasian, and who have good finances, who could afford to have these kind of joint documents. Because I've had clients who can't afford health insurance or even car insurance and can't afford to add their spouse to the lease. They don't own property. They don't own investment accounts. They barely have just photos together and they're barely making it. So it's really harsh on them. But at the same time, I do appreciate the government side as well. They need something to go by. And so it creates a push and pull that's really difficult. And that's why with clients that even if they don't have good finances, there's other ways. They definitely have something they could get joint together. They could get utility bills in each other's names. Have statements, personal statements, declarations. And if they're in the United States, at the end of the day, they're going to do an in-person interview, and they have to knock it out of the park and be very prepared for that because they could get denied at that point.
Right. Another important thing that I wanted to talk about today is that even if spouses don't live together,
Hmm.
right, it's still possible to get the case approved, and we've seen this happen
Yeah, yeah.
for certain reasons.
You got to explain it. There's got to be a reason why. Maybe someone is going to, graduate school. They have to move to a different state, and the other spouse has their job here. Sometimes it's cultural reasons. So we have a case right now; it's pending where they got married, but until they have their religious marriage overseas, they can't move in together. But because of not having advanced parole and the travel bans and all this kind of stuff and the COVID, they have to postpone the marriage or they can't go. So We just got to explain it, and they have to be sensitive to cultural issues and sensitive to people's financial background. So it is doable. But sometimes we have people that just say we don't want to live together, and that's when, as attorneys, we have to, in the initial consultation, judge: is this real? Why are you not living together? Sometimes it's just a situation that works out that way, but sometimes it's like this doesn't seem real, and we're really the first line of defense against marriage fraud in these green card cases. So that's when we have to say, you know what, we can't take this case. We're not comfortable, or it just seems too weird for us, and I'm not willing to submit this because I don't want to submit what's potentially a fraudulent case. Just got to be honest with people, because a lot of times it is suspicious you're not living together if you don't have a good reason. Um, and so we really have to break it down a couple. Why is it that it's like this? We've had cases where one person is living in a really small place and it's just too uncomfortable for both to live there. But now that they're married, they're getting their finances together to then get a better place to move in, but they're looking for a good deal. And so in that case, we'll say, listen, okay, we'll submit the case with this explanation, but you got to move in together while the case is pending at least, and get that lease agreement. But we'd explain that, yeah, I have a small studio, barely has enough place for one person. And if they're going to move in, we're going to put their stuff. Okay, that's a practical reason. But it does get suspicious, but you'll do an in-person interview. We'll talk to the officer, explain it. Maybe have photos of the house to show how small it is and how uncomfortable it would be to put them all in. So if you could explain it reasonably and hopefully back it up with documentation, it is something that's doable if you're not living together. But it is a red flag, and it's a serious red flag.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Anya. I'm glad we jumped into this different kind of stuff, a lot of different kind of topics. I wasn't expecting to talk about this last one, but I'm really glad we talked about that because we get this question all the time because people who don't sometimes can't live together. But with that, I appreciate it. We'll catch you all again next week for episode 7. This was episode 6. If you're interested in schedule a consultation with us, email the office at info@jqqlaw.com. You can schedule a consultation with either myself or Anya. We'd be happy to help. There are consultation fees that apply, but just email us and briefly describe the immigration issue that you have so you see what's going on, and we can take it from there. Until
Thank
next
you
one.
all. Thank you
Bye-bye.
all for watching. Give a like to this video and see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.